very simple. We have our cover, we remove the shock, we take our bolts off there, and then this nut and the whole shaft comes out, and then, you know, we put it back together. We set up a little bit. It's a 98 Tahoe we're doing here. And I'll jump ahead on how I have this set up here. I've got two jack stands holding the frame here, and I've got the tire. Okay, I've got the emergency brake on the back. And then the front here, I have another little jack just sitting right there. Okay. And then on the other side, I have this jacked up, just enough to spin this tire here, because the reason being is right in here, you see the bolts where the CV shaft hooks on? Well, it's easier to get a straight shot at them, if I can turn them. So that's why. So you can see I have this all out. Very simple job, actually. The shock is just going to mount right here, and the other shock mount is just down here. Very simple. So you can kind of set up, again, very minimal tools, and very simple job here. Let's just real quick, I'm doing this backwards, let's look at the tools that I have here and what we're using. Alright, so there's the new CV joint you can see right there, and here's our little flap, which, you know, just basically goes up here, you know, the little cover. Alright, you can see that. See the little plastic clips that hold it in place. Now I had to remove the shock here. That was easy. So there's the shock. You see how it's got the bolts on, you know, each side. These are lug nuts for the tire. These are the, that's the nut and the washer that go on the end of the CV shaft here. Now we got a new nut here, okay. And then,
and the 6 little bolts you see in the screen there by the big nut, they just hold the CV joint to the engine side, that's all.
So what I have here, I only have 3 sockets for this whole job. Pretty easy. I've got a 15 millimeter, an 18 millimeter, and a 36 millimeter. Now this socket here, I rented it from O'Reilly Auto Parts. So it was $20 deposit. I can bring it back. You can buy it or you can rent it. But this nut on the end, I found, is bigger than some of the other GM cars I've done. And I'm using air tools. Okay, I'm just using, as you can see, just a basic clutch. And I've got a basic compressor here. Okay, not a big deal. Just, you know, 150 PSI kind of compressor. This job's so easy, though. You can do it with regular tools. And I didn't really need some of these, but I'll show you what I have. I'm using just a 1/2-inch socket here, and I've got this. Pliers I'm using just for those plastic clips. Screwdriver just to wiggle things. And these are just extras. I just keep me on hand. I'm not really using the sledgehammer. That I was just sort of tapping the front of that CV joint out, the old one. I was just curious if it was in tight, that's all. So let's get the CV joint out quick. You don't need a lot, we've already gone over that. Let's get this shield off here. This particular Tahoe, the shield is ripped. So that's just the way it is. We can still get it back up there. And that's where I use, I'm just going to take this off, I've already done it. And these are the clips that we just push in to hold them on. But those pins that I told you about again that you see here, not really a magical way to get them off. If you can just get a pliers kind of under the lip of them. Now the shock right here, if you've never taken a shock off, don't be afraid of that. It's very simple. All it is one bolt through the top right there. I've already removed it. It's just a nut and a washer. That's it. You don't need air tools generally to do it, and it's a lock washer. Okay, that's nut number 1. Same thing down here. I've already removed it. It's just that with the washer and the lug nut. And then the shock just comes out. And just by taking the shock out, see how that loose that is? And that's what this jack's for. I use that just to kind of adjust the bottom up and down just slightly to get the bolt holes when I bolt it back together. But just by getting that out of the way is what allows this CV joint to come through once we unbolt it. Remember, I took the shock out because, here, get the camera over here, it made more room in between here to get the CV joint through, okay, the axle shaft, if you want to call it. So, you see how the bolts, how they move there? This is going to make it really easy for us to put the bolts on there one by one by one. Absolutely easy. That's why we have this tire off the ground so we can spin it. Now, remember I talked about rotating the tire? Well, all I'm using is my extension that you saw, and you get right in here. I've already tightened this, but in your case you're going to loosen it. It's a straight shot in to get those bolts. Now, you don't need air tools. You can use a regular ratchet. I just happen to have the air tools. So we tighten that up or loosen it in the case of getting rid of it. Okay. So this is real simple. Again, we're doing this backwards. You can see that's not bolted in. It just comes through the hub here. And then look right here. I'm going to use this to point with. You see the holes right there? Okay. And there's the holes on the CV shaft. Okay. All we're going to do is we're going to bolt that up to there. Remember. Okay, now remember I talked about the tire rotating. Those bolts are so easy to get to. That's the only thing holding it on over there. I'm just using my extension and my 15 millimeter, and look at this straight shot in there, okay? To loosen it or to tighten it, but watch how easy this works because we have the tire off on the other side. So now I can rotate it to the next bolt, straight shot, rotate it again. I'm doing this by hand. It's so easy because the tire's up off the ground. That's why I have those jack stands, just always remember to be safe. But now we can go bolt by bolt for removing it or tightening it. Very, very simple. That's why that is. And this nut I've already installed since we're doing this in reverse order. So it's very simple. We have our cover, we remove the shock, we take our bolts off there, and then this nut and the whole shaft comes out, and then, you know, we put it back together. So all it is right here, I'm going to pull it out just so you can see. There's the bolts right there, and that's why I took that tire off on the other side so I can spin this. I'm going to reach in here. We're going to pull this out. And there's our axle shaft with our holes. Okay, we're going to reinstall this though. Is this the new one? So, here we go. See, it's coming right out here. Very simple. It's lining up. There we go. And voila. Now it's up there to bolt on. See how easy that is? Now, over here on the other side with the tire off, I can spin the tire and I'll move those bolts so I can get my air gun on it. So now, with the tire off here, it'll spin the hub and you don't even have to have it in neutral. Okay, so, I got the new nut and I had to use the old washer, so here we go. I'll put that on right now. Here's the new nut for the new shaft. And I'm just going to grab my, remember we rented the 36 wrench here.
You rented it?
Yep. I'm going to do this real quick.
You didn't buy it?
With air, but you could do this with regular. So, bottom of the shock.
Okay.
Okay. And you have that. I'm just going to put that on there to keep them together. I'm going to put the bolts back together. This is the 18 millimeter socket and wrench that I've been using. So very simple. There. Okay, so the bolt for the shock, very simple, goes right through the top there. And if you have any trouble lining it up, just, you know, remember to watch your brake line. And remember, don't take a hammer and start banging on the end of that and mushrooming those threads on the end. We're going to do our bolt and the nut there on the shock. And just remember, I've got it lined up to go through. Don't try to bang the bolt here to try to get it through and mushroom the end. Take your time to line that up. You'd be better off taking a screwdriver and just gently kind of lining up the shock a little bit. Okay. So now that goes through, we're going to put this on, which obviously I know you know how to do. But just to show you the size, this is the 18 millimeter wrench right here to hold the nut. Here's our 18 millimeter socket right here. I'm not even using air tools on this. This I'm just doing old school. To tighten. Piece of cake. Same with the bottom. We're going to do the same thing. And that's, again, where I use this wrench, or this, to line it up. You know, sometimes the little arm needs to be raised a little bit in the air, just to get a better, little bit of a, just get that bolt lined up, just a tiny bit on the shock there. And there we go. It's through. And again, it's very simple, hand tools, no big deal. So 18 millimeter, again. But, as a plug for you as a mechanic, for air tools. Look at that. It's all tight. So if you don't have them, get them. We're just going to put our cover back on here best we can. This particular Tahoe, like I said, it was ripped. But those pins that I told you about again that you see here, not really a magical way to get them off. If you can just get a pliers kind of under the lip of them. So it's very simple. We have our cover, we remove the shock, we take our bolts off there, and then this nut and the whole shaft comes out. And then, you know, we put it back together.